Okay, this is Larry Pollock coming to you from Underground Performance Gym, Hardcore Training Gym, Ventura, California. And I'm here with the one and only Taeian Clark. Let me tell you a little bit about Taeian. So I first was introduced to Taeian in 2016, and we were on a Facebook message board called Geared Up. And it was interesting. It was run by some East Coast guys, and they had like a little East Coast clique going on there, their little gang of guys. And if you weren't part of their clique, they'd try to gang up on you. And like they did with me, because I was from the West Coast, they didn't know who I was. There was Adam something, and was it Nick Trigili on there?
I think he was. I think it was Adam McCovey or something.
Adam McVeigh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Nick Trigili and somebody else, but they were like the board moderators. And I remember they tried to intimidate me right away, but that didn't work. I put them in check, and they realized that not to argue with me after a little while, because every time they did, I'd make them look stupid. And they were doing the same thing to you. I remember when you first got on the board, they were riding you, trying to like discredit your theories and everything else. But I had heard, what you said, and a lot of it made sense to me. And I'm not somebody that, follows the pack just because, I listen, and if it makes sense, I'm going to listen to it. And you made a lot of sense in it. At the time, I'd already been dealing with Crohn's disease I first got it in 2014, and really, it was bad until you were the one that got me on the diet and the supplement regimen, and that's really what got it under control. So I got to give you credit for that. And
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's what I think you posted about Crohn's or something like that. And I think when I started posting some advice to you, I think they started attacking me because of that too, being like, oh, you can't fix this with diet, and just going on and on.
Yeah, they were a bunch of idiots. And but yeah, we hooked up, and he hooked me up with the diet, the supplement program, and I'm pretty much on that same supplement program to this day. I've added in a few things like Peruvo. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, but
A little bit.
the beef gelatin with each protein meal, for the anti-inflammatory amino acids, for the high glycine. I still do that like religiously. Every single meal I'm putting in collagen peptides, and the curcumin. Oh yeah, I'm curcumin twice a day. Everything that was on there. I still got my 50 bottles of vitamins.
Are you still? I think I asked you this in text. Are you still fully? What's the word? Like, is it still fully zero inflammation? Like, are you fully doing good still?
Once in a while, I'll get a flare up.
Yeah.
But I've managed to get it under control, and I've kind of figured out like what things cause flare ups. But for the most part, it's under control as long as my diet's good. I'm pretty good, and I'm pretty strict on my diet. I've
I'm, I'm assuming you have a little screw up here and there, right? A little takeout here and there every once in a while.
No, mm-mm.
No, yeah, that's
No,
good.
I don't cheat on my diet because it's not worth it to me.
Yeah,
I learned
especially in your case.
learned a long time ago, one cheeseburger, and I'm done for
Yeah,
days, if not hours.
yeah.
So yeah, no gluten for me, no dairy products. Although I have this zero something yogurt that actually seems to help my digestion. It's Sub-Zero. There's zero sugar in it, zero nothing.
Those probably, but it's still dairy.
Yeah, but I have that, and it actually seems to help me a little bit.
Probably the probiotics in
Yeah,
it.
and I'm taking probiotics as well on top of that. So yeah, every time I do have a flare up, though, I can figure out pretty much what it's from, and You were the one that first introduced me to Lantus, and now I have the Basilar insulin, which is the generic for Lantus. Same thing, basically. Just my insurance pays for the Basilar, and I've had to experiment with that a little bit. I remember when I initially started. I don't remember what I was when I initially started, but I was at 1.30 units one time a day, and now I've broken that up into 10 units twice a day, um, which seems to work better.
If you remember, I'm not sure if you want to jump right into this. I mentioned that one um, about the insulin differences, how injecting it, the frequency alone of injecting it can determine if you're going to gain fat or lose fat while building muscle. It's a big thing I think people are sleeping on.
First of all, before we actually get into the nitty gritty, I want to tell people, if you're watching this podcast and you're serious about learning some real shit, not bro science, take notes, because this is the real deal. What this guy says, like, he can back it up, and it goes against some bro science stuff because the bros don't understand it. But this is the real. You're going to get some information today that you'd never heard anywhere else. I already know that because I know all the bro science stuff. So, yeah, let's dive into it. Whatever you want to start with. We can start with nutrition or the insulin or whatever subject you want to go with.
A lot of topics that we're going to jump right into. The whole bro science aspect of it. One thing I want to say that that I really like to take up. What I really like to do is always pick, like, you're an old school guy. There's been so many things in the bodybuilding community where so many of the pros felt like, when I do this, this happens. But all these new age experts, I guess if you want to call them that, to be like, no, there's no study on this. It doesn't happen. But then the science ends up coming out proving what, the pros from a decade ago and decades ago, what they were doing ended up being right. Like, I'm sure you've heard um, you can't spot reduce body fat. Yet every pro since the dawn of time have always felt like, when I do this exercise, I feel like I lose. When I do abdominal exercises, I feel like I lose abdominal fat. And now that's been proven real with science when, the bros would say, no, there's no studies, it's not real. Now, basically, almost everything I feel like the old age pros did, what they said they felt was real via experience, ended up coming true with science. And all the armchair experts, I call them, they just denied so many things for years that ended up turning out to be legitimate. Like the one thing we were talking about in text when I text you there, every pro since the dawn of time always felt like, hey, I feel like I cut better on shorter esters and I bulk better on the longer ones, like, Deca, Testy, and they feel like they cut it better on Test Pro. And of course, we had for the past, I don't know, maybe 2 decades now, there's all the internet experts where, even though I'm an internet expert, but, they would go and they would say things like, no, test this test, the ISR doesn't change anything about it. But now we have science on it that literally proved that all the shorter acting forms of testosterone, even DECA, they did those two different anabolics. The shorter the ester was, the more androgenic they were. And the more androgenic something is, the more fat loss you have. The other thing is that the shorter esters, they had less estrogen conversion. So, same deal. People, they're prepping for a competition, switch to test prop, NPP, if they're, keeping DECA in, they go to all the shorter esters. And, people be like, no, there's no difference, test and test. But we literally have proof now that it makes less estrogen, there's more fat loss. And then on the opposite side of things, the longer esters proved that there was actually more muscle growth as well. Even when the dosages were exactly matched, even matched to the actual milligram weight of the compound. So, yeah, a lot of my research has basically been like, hey, if we have 40 years of all these pro bodybuilders saying that when I do this, I get this result, and I just know it's real by experience, I look for that science, because there's got to be a reason why we've had, thousands of bodybuilders over time doing A and getting this result versus people online just being like, no, there's no research behind it, so it's not real. And I feel like that's what a lot of my research has been, especially lately, proving, time and true methods.
Well, you have a couple different factors going into here. One, you have the I heard this from somebody who heard it from somebody who heard it from somebody, and if it's repeated long enough, people believe it. It becomes the truth, even if it's wrong. So there's
Yeah.
that. And then there's the other part where you have coaches that want to sell their program. And, selling somebody on a program of short esters where you have to take shots, multiple every day or every other day versus taking a long ester shot once a week or twice a week, more people are likely to subscribe to that one. So they're looking at it from a financial point of view, like how many clients will stick with me if I, put them on these long esters versus short esters. Even though I figured out a long time ago on myself that short esters work better and make more sense. And I had came up with my own logic behind it. And now you have there's studies that actually prove what I've like figured out on myself all along and with clients.
Yeah. Same thing with, like you said, when, you know, back when the internet became really more popular and everybody was on it, the whole thing with like DECA example, DECA raises prolactin. That's been talked about for 2.5 decades or whatever, since, people have been using the internet for the most part. DECA raises prolactin. You need K-Bur, whatever, etc. And I'm the only one, it seems, that have found the studies on actual DECA in humans, and DECA didn't raise prolactin. And it's just funny because this was another thing. One of the main things I got famous for was the DECA only cycles, and you're probably one of the first people, I think, so that actually had a bit of the in the know on what guys did back then, even though you weren't you were in Arnold's era and whatnot, but you lived with Menser, wasn't it?
Yeah, I trained with Menser
And
and lived with him, and
yeah,
our stack was NPP only, 300 milligrams 3 days a week.
and then
That's
it's
what
so
we took.
funny. Everybody outside of that era, they act like they were in that era, and you'll see it all online. They're like, no, they all used test back then. They had a little bit of test in there, and it's just so funny that, like you said, when things just keep getting repeated, it becomes fact. And then that's a big thing I always argue with people with, was that, oh yeah, they did use test back then, and then you have somebody like you that actually lived with probably one of the most second or third famous bodybuilders of all time from the 70s era, Menser, and straight from your mouth, you lived with him and you both took NPP only, DECA and Nandrolone, whatever, and Nandrolone only. So yeah, it's funny that is, that's what goes on today. It's just
Not
people
only that,
repeating this.
Victor Richards did the same thing, and he was like what biggest dude back then of anybody.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
he actually.
it was quite common that people just took the anabolics and we didn't take testosterone. It wasn't a thing. And I think people forget that the reason anabolics were made in the first place is they modified the testosterone molecule so you'd have less side effects, less aromatization, less conversion to DHT. That's why they made them in the first place.
So funny. Everybody seems to forget that point when they want to argue, like, and not to say test is worthless. It's not. Everybody today uses test. It has its purpose. It has its benefits, and some people get along great with it. But it's such a huge denial today that test is the best for some reason. Meanwhile, that's literally, like you said, why they were created. They're like, let's make something maybe without this side, without that side, or less of this side, and let's see if we can make it a little more anabolic as well. Like, that is literally the reason every single anabolic was made after testosterone, and it just doesn't seem to click with still
Well,
99% of
the
people.
argument is that people say that testosterone is more natural.
Yeah.
Okay, well, cancer is natural too, but you don't want more of that, you know.
Well, you know what's natural? 100 milligrams of testosterone a week. That's what's natural. Not
Right.
you want to, if you want to use that reference, well, then you better not use 500, 1,000 milligrams because you're not doing what your body naturally wants it to either. That way either.
Right. Exactly. And I don't subscribe to that. You need a gram of tests a week. I don't believe in that. Uh, just from personal experience, if you want to be bloated and have gyno, or I never got gyno, but if you want to break out and get gyno, or all the estrogen side effects, DHT side effects, everything, yeah, take a gram of test a week.
It's funny you mentioned Victor Richards too, because he actually just did a video. I forget with who, it might have been Palumbo, but he just did a video talking about the cycles he ran. And he basically said, I think he said the only things he basically ever did was 400 deca in about, I forget how many Anavar tabs here and there with, yeah, with DECA. So it's literally what you're saying is true. You know what I mean? You were in that era of these guys, lived with Mentor, and then you knew Victor Richards. I remember you told me a story about him, but yeah, like you said, he used DECA. He comes out on his own. He used DECA, and it's so funny how people deny it. They'll be like, "No, they're lying. They must have used test or this or that," and it's just they act like testosterone is needed to get massive. Yeah, look at Victor Richards. Like he's you know
Well, this is what I've learned about most prep coaches, especially if they were like former pros or high level bodybuilders. Whatever they did for themselves, they think that's the answer for everybody, because they achieved a certain level of success, a certain size and whatever, taking, X regimen, that therefore applies to everybody. Never mind that they were a genetic freak and they probably would have grown on any regimen. Um,
which is kind of like Dennis Newman. He said his large majority of the first part of his career, the only thing he used was Winstrol. He said, I think his story was somebody gave him Winstrol, he liked it, and it worked well, and he just kept using Winstrol basically solo for the longest time until he started using um, other anabolics. But it's the proof's right there. Somebody like Dennis Newman could get to the size he got basically utilizing just Winstrol for a large portion of his career.
right. Well, I can tell you, like myself, I use test, but on a very low dose. Um, Actually 400 milligrams a week. I think that's relatively low. And and then I run, and this is now this I'm running 200 milligrams of NPP, and let's see, 20, 40, 80 milligrams of Anavar. So that's what I run at 58. Now, and at my biggest, when I was in my 40s, I ran higher dosages, but I never ran high tests. My highest test I ran was like 500, and then maybe I'd throw EQ on top of the nandrolone, or Primo on top of the nandrolone. But I'm not trying to be 245 pounds anymore. So what I'm taking now is just enough for me to be able to train hard and stay healthy and try to keep my blood work pretty good.
I was going to say something going along with that. Slipped my mind.
Now I have a question for you.
Yeah,
What you said that the nandrolone doesn't produce high prolactin.
yeah,
Um, what about progesterone?
yeah. Progesterone it will. Here's the funny thing where people were confused on the science part of it. So, because as you know, in the 70s and I'd say most part of the 80s, nobody really used testosterone. So you had all these guys on nandrolone solo, and they never had any prolactin side effects. The only time prolactin side effects came into play is when guys are running testosterone, then testosterone plus DECA. So the funny thing is this, and studies on TRT, even TRT alone, for almost all the participants, their prolactin was at the higher end of the normal range. Where DECA comes into place here is that, so on its own, it makes very little estrogen, but it enhances estrogen conversion. So when you add a player like test in there that makes a lot of estrogen, the DECA is going to make testosterone make even more estrogen and then
Got
even
it.
more prolactin. So that is where the whole, oh yeah, when I add DECA, DECA is giving me prolactin side. It's like, no, it's just enhancing the shitty aspects of testosterone.
Got
If
it.
you were to run Nandrolone solo like the guys, did in the past, or a much lower dose of test, you would see your prolactin is very low. So like besides the studies, they show like 100 milligrams and 300 milligrams of test versus DECA and so on. The DECA prolactin was like almost is something like 7, is it NG or an MO? I forget. And he was very low. And yeah, same with all my guys' blood work. There's guys that are running like 2-3 grams of DECA prolactin, like bottomed out almost.
So when somebody's running like 2 or 3 grams of DECA by itself, they're
Yeah.
not getting any sexual dysfunction.
No, and that is a funny thing. People always ask me this. They really do not realize that the whole sexual dysfunction aspect comes into play. Is it was only a 90s thing. I remember I talked to Robbie Robinson, a few other of the like 70s 80s era pros, and they're like, I never knew anybody use tests, and I also never heard of this decadic thing. And the same with all my clients, that they all been doing it for about 10 years now, majority of them. There's no decade. They make a joke now. They call it decadic because it enhances their libido. They'll be like, I'm decadic now because I want to screw 8 times a day. So that the whole decadic thing only came into play in the 90s, where tests became really popular and everybody's using it. Now you got tests plus deca. So you have test that was making this much estrogen, this much prolactin. Now it's going to make this much and this much. So what I like to properly call it is test decadic versus
Got it.
decadic, is the
That makes
deca
sense.
solo isn't doing it.
That makes sense because I've actually had that when I've ran nandrolone at higher levels,
Yeah.
and my estrogen got higher, but it was also running testosterone at higher
And that
levels.
was same.
And the
That was same
rule
as
of thumb was whatever anabolic you took, you got to take
double.
double the testosterone. So in other words, if you're going to take 300 milligrams of DECA, you had to take 600 milligrams of test. That's what was preached,
I remember that was a staple in the 2000s, right? It was double your testosterone to your deca. Test deca Debo was the bread and butter. And the funny thing, because that was my first few cycles. Well, my first one was test solo, and then it was test deca. But yeah, that's the same deal. I got the whole decadic thing. In the second I stopped running that combo, it was like, I had the opposite, too high of a libido with deca solo, basically.
Interesting. So we were talking about the esters, how the longer esters, you mentioned that they're less androgenic. You also said that they're more anabolic, but more conversion to estrogen.
So what was actually really neat about this study, so obviously they did it on animals, but sometimes they'll measure the anabolic potency via like things like nitrogen retention, and that's a decent marker, but not the best. So what they did with this was they actually, when they killed the animals, they then weighed and did their little muscle fiber cell count, whatever, on the actual muscles. And the longer esters actually had 3 times as much muscle growth, literally 3 times heavier muscles. But this was in comparison to the short esters being ran very improperly. Like, nobody's going to do test prop once a week. It's going to go up and then bam,
Right.
it's going to be out of you. But here's the neat thing. So what they did do is they did try and match the blood levels. So they took like test base, deca base, and propionate, and they took all the different esters and they matched them to the longer one. So like test base, they shot it like every 2 hours or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but each ester they shot it to match literally the exact same stable blood levels. And even when they hit the exact same blood levels, it was still a minor to moderately more anabolic still that long ester. And that could be because of the estrogen conversion. But the neat thing on the androgenic potency of their short esters is that even when they match an exact stable blood level, so because some people would argue, oh, maybe it's because the shorter Easters they spiked and then it dropped down. Maybe that was why it was more androgenic. But no, when they matched it like to a T, the blood levels, it was still 2 times as androgenic, the shorter Easters as the longer one. So it's not even a time frame and blood level stableness aspect. The Easters have to be doing something else to the hormone, basically.
But do you want things to be more energetic and less anabolic?
Well, I mean, I'd say that would come down to the user, right? Somebody who's worried about androgenic size, hair loss, and this and that. Like a lot of my followers, I have a high hair loss, following. Guys like that, absolutely no. I'd say the guys who are seeking that extra androgenic activity might be a guy who doesn't get androgenic sides and doesn't care about androgenic sides. And, if you're prepping, it's like, hey, I want to burn more fat. I have a little bit of trouble with estrogen. I want that extra androgenic activity. So I'd say, it has its purpose, basically.
Got it.
Or looking at it from the view of, let's say, NPP versus DECA. Um, this is the one thing most people notice when they go on DECA. It's not a super heavy bloating compound, but they notice they look tighter on the NPP. So another case where it's not going to be immensely more androgenic in comparison, because DECA is way less androgenic than testosterone. But let's say you want that little bit of extra androgenic activity, you got NPP over DECA.
And it seems like the sexual dysfunction part, it doesn't happen as much with NPP as DECA.
And that's the funny thing. So yeah, like with my following, most guys will report actually NPP feels like a more milder trend. They get the hardness from trend. They get even better libido. So yeah, you'll notice the extra androgenic effects basically.
What I like about the NPP is it seems to like you can really regulate the how much is in your body at a particular time. It doesn't seem to like build up on itself like the long esters. Like if you take a long ester, it compounds on itself. So your nanograms per deciliter might start out week 1 at a certain level, and by week 10 they're way higher. Where the shorter esters, I think they're in and out of your system faster. So you're not getting that compounding effect.
The other benefit to that, because I think we've messaged each other a couple times over the past like 10-ish years here. Have you seen any of my videos or articles on the androgen receptor downregulation?
No.
No. So I came across some really neat studies here, like really, really interesting. I'm not sure if you've noticed this yourself, that the effects seem to wean off after some time on anabolics. But, many people play that down to, whether it's milestat and this or that. So anyways, I came across some really neat research with receptors downregulating, because all the science shows that, yeah, androgen receptors upregulate. They do. That's the initial use. I finally found a study that showed months into the use on actual humans too. And after a couple months, the androgen receptor returned right back down to baseline. And what matches with this is all the studies, because I found some studies on orals, DECA, testes, so very short Easters, all the way up to long Easters. And that when they went for 12 weeks, they noticed that 90% of the gains in strength and size was actually by week 6. And they only got a 10% benefit going an extra 6 weeks. And this is pinned down to that it only had an anti-catabolic effect, is why you still got some gains, but not an immense amount of gains. So where I'm going with, and to add to this too, I found some really crazy studies on height growth. They give children stuff like D-ball, Halo, a whole bunch of different steroids to help them grow in height before their growth plates fuse. And what they notice, as soon as they give them the anabolics, at about the week 6 mark, bam, no more growth. And the growth in some of these studies is insane. Some of these children were literally growing about an inch on average within 6 weeks, which is absolutely insane for that much bone growth. And they noticed it just plateaued. They kept some children on it for 2 years, literally just plateaued. But when they gave them a break and they reinitiated that growth protocol for another 6 weeks, bam, they grew another inch. Every time they took a break and added the anabolic back in, they grew another inch. So basically a whole bunch of real world data with these studies. And then on the cellular level, that the anabolic effect really halts at about the 6 week mark, which is more benefit to the shorter Esters because when you stop them, it's in and out. So you can, when you're out quicker, you can let the receptors cover in a quicker time frame. Whereas when you're on the longer Esters, it's building up, and when you drop it, it takes weeks and weeks and weeks for it to get out of your systems before they kind of resensitize.
So then would you recommend like 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off, something like this?
Basically, but the off time is dependent on what item you use. So, there's steroid plot graphs online and stuff like that where you can put in, like here's nandrolone decanoate, and you'll see at 500 milligrams how many half lives, every 6 days, whatever it takes till it gets to till it's bottomed out or HRT level. So, with short Esters, we need about 2 to 3 weeks off, depending on how short they are. And with the longer Esters, depending on the dose, we need about 4 to 6 ish weeks off.
Okay. So during that 2 to 3 weeks off, what happens?
On in what sense? Gain wise or like the cellular level?
Everything.
So on the cellular level, what they showed was that so the original study was on test-D, and it was at 200 milligrams. It took about 2 weeks for basically the androgen receptors to recover. So what that's telling us is that we need to get those anabolic levels at HRT level. So about, like when you have 100 milligrams of test in your, natural, high young male levels, our body needs to be within that natural range for approximately somewhere between 1 to 2 weeks. And then the receptors become resensitized to anabolics again. So that's why we want to base off, if you ran 500 milligrams DECA, it's going to take 2 to 3 weeks before it hits the HRT levels. And we got 2 weeks at HRT levels, and then we're sensitized to the receptors again. And you're not even really coming off, because if you take an item that's a long Easter, DECA, at the end of 3 weeks, you just hit HRT levels. So people would be like, oh, but then I'm coming off and I'm going to lose gains and this and that. And it's like, no, your levels are still HRT levels. You're just not, if you were to shoot HRT levels after your cycle, you're just prolonging, you're doing super HRT then. And the same with gain wise, like you're not losing anything in that time frame. The only thing you're losing in that time frame is glycogen and water, right?
Well, actually, I've told this story before, but I surprised myself in 2007. There was Operation Raw Deal. And 2010, I had to go to Terminal Island. I turned myself in for, I had a 24-month sentence, and I ended up doing 14 months on it. And at the time, I was running, probably a gram of everything combined. And I was about between 240 and 250. And that was like the biggest, strongest I'd ever been during that time. And I expected to go in there and lose like a lot. And even though they were giving me my HRT testosterone at 200 milligrams a week, I still thought that I was going to lose like a lot of size and strength. That was just in my head that, well, I'm going to go off and I'm going to lose. To my surprise, I didn't lose anything for a whole year. Like no size, no strength. I kept training in there. I got enough food. And it wasn't until 12 months in, and I had 2 months to go, that I started to see a slight decline in strength. But it took a year before I started getting that slight decline. And then I got out 2 months later. And then when I did get out and I went back on a mild dose, when I mean mild is like 500 milligrams, man, I just blew back right up.
An exact same story, well, not exact same, but uh, I was playing around with high dosages, basically barely coming off for the longest time, and then I just kind of sort of gave up. And then it was many, many months later, I decided I went on a low dose cycle, just 400 milligrams. I have a video on this, and yeah, same deal. I blew up. I gained the best I ever gained because I had that long period off, and a similar deal to that. After that cycle, I stopped training. I was just eating like a normal person, and I did not lose basically anything with zero training as well till about 6 months into it. I was just eating like a normal person, not training. I mean, I lost some glycogen instantly, but like I was still maintaining my weight and most of my shape basically. And it not to that 6 month mark where I really, that was when I started to, decently decline. So
Yeah, I think it's a lot of psychological. We just think that it's there's so much dependent on the drugs, and once you build that muscle and you've held it for a long time, as long as you keep training and eating, that muscle's not just going to go away.
I think it's the mega test users when they're using 1 to 2 grams of test, they have a shit ton of water weight, and the second they come off and that water weight goes off,
Mhm.
I think it's mostly those guys that are confusing, like, oh my god, I'm losing all my muscle. And it's like, no, you're losing all your test water weight. You're not shrinking away.
Yeah, see, so with myself, I never hold a lot of water. I just never have, and I don't like compounds that make me hold a lot of water. Like, I hate D-ball, and that I tried that mint stuff, and I hated it because they made me really estrogeny and bloated for the first time of anything, and I didn't like that feeling. So I'm always kind of pretty lean. So I
I
never dropped like a huge amount of water.
I use men for a short period too. That definitely one of the highest water retentive compounds there is.
Yeah, some power lifter told me this is the stuff. He swore by it, but I didn't like it at all. I felt like I got just as good or better response on Nandrolone, just regular DEC or MPP, and without the water retention.
Wait, this is what I was going to say. Unless we're still talking about this, the insulin. That's what I was going to go on about the
Yeah, I'm
insulin.
interested in that.
So this study was really cool. I'm not sure if you read this. When you have a moment, go to my website and read. Under articles, you'll find my insulin article. Um, it's going to be the most in-depth insulin article you've ever read. So, a lot of guys out there, they consider themselves like an insulin expert, and they're just kind of rehashing the same info, like take this amount of carbs for IU insulin, whatever. And it's like, it's so much more in depth. Like on Levemir, the insulin Levemir, literally they show participants lose weight and have less appetite. Yet everybody says the same thing, that, oh no, insulin just increases your appetite, increases weight gain. Like, no, they're all completely different. You have Lantus, which increases appetite, increases weight gain. They don't understand that comparing different insulins is like comparing Test versus DECA, completely different compounds, almost. And one of the reasons for this is that the different insulins also bind to different insulin receptors in the body differently. So one insulin might bind to the insulin receptor at the muscle tissue site stronger than it would bind to tissue in the brain, fat cells, etc. So different insulins are having a completely different effect in so many different areas in the body. So where this study comes into play, which is really neat, because I'm sure you know all the protocols out there. It's either take Lantus once or twice a day, and or with it, you take the bolus shots of a rapid, like 10 IU Humalog per meal or 20 IU or pre-workout or this or that. This study, so amazing. It's a game changer for the way people use insulin. Like I was saying, it's funny. All the protocols out there are all the same. There's nothing interesting about them. So what they did with this was they took, as an example, 9 IU, and we're going to have 9 IU 3 times a day for each meal a day you're eating. Or we're going to split up the 9 IU and take 3 IU 3 times around that meal time. Now, the group taking the 9 IU, they had actual fat gain, and they had a modest amount of muscle growth. The group who took the 9 IU split up into 3 IU times 3, they had can't remember if it was double, but it was a lot more muscle growth, but they actually had fat loss. So all people on the exact same diets, exact same everything. One group is gaining fat with a little bit of muscle growth, and the other is gaining a lot more muscle and actually losing fat. So why would you ever take insulin in the way that's going to cause fat gain and less muscle? Like, it's, what's the word? It's can't think of the word, but you know what I mean. It's like,
Counterproductive.
yeah, it's silly to run it any other way now with this research.
So let me ask you a question. I usually run my insulin, the fast acting, around trainings. And the reason I do that is I feel like the training, it puts you in the most anabolic state as far as like absorbing nutrients and, you know, protein synthesis and everything happening at that point. For example, after a training session, I'll have a whey protein shake. immediately. I mean, a big one with a whole thing of rice milk and a scoop of collagen peptides and a large scoop of whey isolate. And after training, I have no problem digesting that, and I don't go to the restroom, anything. My body just sucks it up. If I did that any other time of the day, I'd be straight to the toilet. So, and especially around like big body parts like legs or back, I can eat like crazy after training. And I seem to absorb all the nutrients because my body's just sucking it all up. Versus, like I said, on an off training day or even, before training, I could not do, my digestion's not working that well. So would it make sense to take, like what I do right now is I take a pre-workout insulin with 5 units of Humalog with 2 units of growth hormone and my BPC and TB500. And then I drink an intra-workout drink and I sip that during my workout. My workout's like 2 hours long. So I'm doing that with aminos during my training. And then after training, I do 15 units of Humalog, and then I'm eating. And I have the shake and 4 rice cakes. And then within 40 minutes later, I'm eating a big meal. But then before the big meal, I'm having my 10 units of the long-acting Basaglar. So do you think that's a waste to take that 15 units right after the training?
Not a waste. As you know, it's giving you an anabolic benefit. But if you simply just took that dosage that you need and split it up, again, this is what the study says. If you just split it up, you'd be getting a fat loss effect with even more muscle growth. Example, your pre-workout one, I think you said 5 IU. If you instead just split that up to, even if it's 2.5 IU, 2.5 IU, 15 minutes before the meal, or, depending on how your gastric emptying rate is, and like when you need it, and you took the 2.5 IU this hour to the other 2.5 IU, whether it's half an hour, an hour later, basically just taking all that insulin that your body needs and utilizes, and just splitting it up. That's literally what the study is saying. So with your, I think you said 15 or 20 IU after the workout, if you instead maybe just had 5 IU, whether it was because you're sipping an intra workout, 5 IU in the middle of the workout, 5 IU at the end, 5 IU, whether it's an hour later before that, that's literally what the study is saying. The more you split it, the more smaller doses split
Mm-hmm.
up, equaling that same bigger dose is what is way more anabolic and with the fat loss.
I see. So
And I have trialed this on a few people, and it's hard. They all feel it's way better. They all feel like they're gaining better. Everything's going better. But it's something more recently I discovered, so I don't have that hardcore concrete data to be like, oh yeah, these guys are seeing like. So, but the study is the proof in the pudding,
so
anyways.
you're saying taking the 5 IU and then an hour later taking 5 more and then an hour later taking 5 more.
Yes. Basically this, yes, and it's just figuring out your meal schedule basically when you're doing this. Essentially, you know what I mean. So, um, or another way to look at it, because when do you eat your pre-workout meal? How soon before the workout?
Depends on the day. To be honest with you, if I'm doing ideally, I'm having my pre-workout meal about an hour before training, before I
Right.
actually start training. Sometimes, I'll get super busy and I'm literally eating my pre-workout meal like 20 minutes before training because, I'm working and now I eat it and then I got to get ready to train. And that doesn't seem to bother me. I can digest chicken and rice pretty fast. Matter of fact, sometimes I need to eat 20 minutes before training that meal.
So the better way to look at it here is, so example with chicken rice, like the average gastric emptying time is like an hour and a half. So, but if you eat that meal an hour before the workout, right? Those nutrients are finally just getting into your small intestine and ready to be uptaken and stuff like that. The better way to look at it is that have that split it up as evenly as possible. Have that 5 IU at that 1 hour mark. And then again, the hour later, have that 5 IU when you're starting your pre workout, starting your workout. whether it's the middle of the work because your workout's 2 hours, have another 5 IU mid workout, have another 5 IU at the end. Basically, taking your total dose based off your blood sugar needs and splitting it up as evenly as possible.
Got it. I can see the scientific part of that working. I just don't know about in the middle of the workout stopping and going and taking an injection of more insulin right then.
The way I look at it, um, for my thoughts of it, when I'm suggesting it, it's split it up as evenly and as much as that fits your lifestyle. Because basically, what it's showing is that, hey, maybe you're not going to want to do it every hour. Obviously, most people wouldn't. But if you can do split it up that little bit extra more versus having just those ball of shots here, here, and here. You know what I mean? Like having it the hour before, right after, then right before you're eating. Splitting it as up as much as possible is basically the key that doesn't disrupt your life.
So, like I mentioned before, like pre-workout, I'm doing the 2 units of GH with 5 units of insulin, and I just found 5 units. I mean, I played with different amounts, and for me, it's like that seems to be I'm absorbing my intra workout and not running to the restroom. Less insulin, and it seems like I'm not digesting that intra workout. It's like I'm going to the restroom during my workout.
Yep.
But I also have Crohn's, so I have problems digesting. Like if I, as intra workout, I drink that highly branched cyclic dextrins, which is basically a really fast acting carbohydrate with aminos. And if I drink that, after I've taken my GH and insulin and sip it during a workout, I have no problem, but I'm absorbing all of that. If I did that any other time of day, I'd be straight to the toilet. Like that sugar would like trigger me to go straight to the toilet immediately as soon as I start drinking it. But because I'm training, my body's sucking all that stuff up.
Actually utilizing it rapidly.
Yeah. And especially like it doesn't really matter what body part I'm training, but especially like bigger body parts like legs, back, whatever. Um, and then afterwards, I don't know, in my head, I just had it to take a larger unit dosage of insulin immediately afterwards because that's when I'm like starving and I want to get as much food in as I can. And I can digest way more food post workout, like in the next few hours. And there's a difference, like, okay, let's say I'm training shoulders and arms. There's a huge difference between the amount of food I can digest after doing that versus training legs. Like after training legs, I can eat like unbelievable amount of food for like the whole day after that because my legs are just, I literally, every time I eat carbs, my legs swell up. It's just like it's sucking it up like sponges. I wish my shoulders and arms would grow like that too, but they're just smaller muscles. I'm not saying they don't grow, but they don't grow like that way. Where I can digest that huge amount of food. And for my recovery, like I could probably recover after like a shoulder and arm workout with like, decent meals. After a leg workout, I got to pound food. If I don't pound food like that night, I'm still wrecked the next day. When I mean wrecked, I mean like I can't walk. So I'm like literally eating probably after the workout I'm eating, and then I'm eating again 2 hours later, and then again 2 hours later. And a good amount of food. And no other time of the week can I do that.
Yes.
So I think like you're putting your body into that anabolic window right there where it's just sucking up nutrients. So that was my idea of increasing the insulin at that point. But you're saying break it up into more smaller doses then.
Yeah. The other way to look at it with breaking up in more smaller doses too is that you're kind of eating the whole way through your workout, right? In your case, you're having your sometimes 20 minutes before the workout, then you're having a pre-workout all throughout your workout, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then even your meal afterwards, right? That takes, little, even though it's, it can be digesting quicker, but it's even with the insulin will help digest it quicker too. But it's still those nutrients are still floating around in your blood, right? Once it gets digested, it's got to go through the portal vein, through the liver, into the bloodstream. And then when it's in the bloodstream, that's when it depends on insulin, right? When the nutrients are in the flowing through your arteries, the insulin is like, hey, that's when we need the insulin. And when you have a protein meal, um, I forget what it is, but depending on the amount of protein you eat, it floats around in the amino acids in your arteries for I forget how many hours, but so we want insulin at a stable, adequate level, that whole time, just constantly shuttling those nutrients directly into the muscle, right? So that's what it seems what makes it so much more anabolic versus, normally take Humalog and,
So that's
kind of
why
in and out.
that's why I take the Humalog pre, then I take Humalog post, and then an hour later I'm eating my actual meal. Like post workout is a shake and 4 rice cakes, and then an hour later I'm eating my actual first meal, and that's when I take the vascular or the Lantus, long acting, and I'll take
What's
10 units at that point.
What's funny with this is, there were some other studies too that showed the basal insulins, like the Lantus, etc. They also had way more muscle growth than just the a bolus shot of the rapid insulin, but they didn't have that same fat loss effect as if you took the rapid every hour, let's say. So no matter what, when you're taking the Lantus, you're getting a much better anabolic response and taking that 10 IU once a day. But it seems like that rapid is kind of the king, splitting it up every hour. But nobody's going to take it every hour, so it just comes down to splitting it up as much as humanly possible. It doesn't disrupt your life.
Now I did find with the vascular or the Lantus, I did gain some body fat. And when I say like some, I mean I'm very lean. Like my normal body fat is like 4.5, 5%. And I can see a little bit more. My skin is a little bit thicker. I'm not saying like I have like fat like other people, but it's a little thicker than it was before I started using that.
100%. That's where it might be more beneficial. But again, it comes down to, do you want to inject every 1 to 2 hours? So that is the neat thing. So all those basal insulins like Lantus, they all showed amazing muscle gain, but they all showed fat gain as well. Versus the rapid done multiple times a day, you get actual fat loss. So it's kind of like one of those things like, do I want the best humanly possible method about this, but do I want to be a slave to
So for me
injecting?
personally, I might be 6% body fat instead of 4.5%. And I don't really care because like I'm almost the same body fat, but I can just tell a difference. I'm not trying to walk around in contest shape 24/7, but I just don't. Maybe other people, they might gain more body fat if they're more prone to gaining body fat.
Food, I see it all the time, especially with Lantus. Like, people blow up on it.
Yeah. So I just noticed that on myself, like um just slight differences in like the skin is a little tiny bit thicker. And also wherever you inject it, this is one thing I figured out, you gain fat. You literally gain fat. I've read studies where it shows there's I don't know the term for it, but where you put the insulin, you gain fat. So when I first started using insulin, I was putting it in my oblique because that's
Yeah,
people said put it in the belly fat. And then I literally was having these like lumps of like fat where I never had before. And it took quite a while for those to go away after I stopped doing it. So now my pre-workout, I shoot intramuscular, and then I use it in the top of my quad where the skin is like pretty thin, and I just pinch the skin and put it under there. And I do have a little tiny bit more fat there, but it's so thin anyways, it's like almost not noticeable. But when I was putting it in my oblique, I did see like actual fat there. Like I could feel it.
I feel like most guys, again, that's like a real world experience effect where most people report that too. You know what I mean? Like, where they're putting it and everybody puts it in the lower gut area. And most people report,
Yeah, so if you're
storing
watching this,
access fat.
if you don't want fat on your abdomen, don't inject insulin there. There's lots of other places to put it. What do you think about intramuscular injection of insulin versus subcutaneous?
Um, Tricky there. No right or wrong way about it. Essentially, I feel the main thing with my only main thought of it is doing something like Lantus intramuscularly would be more beneficial. And the reason I say this is because, so not a lot of people know this, but everybody thinks insulin is anti catabolic. So it is in a fed state. When people were in an unfed state, or not unfed state, but like a low calorie state, it became catabolic. It actually caused you to dump protein, amino acid dumping is what it's called. So everybody taking a moderate dose of Lantus pre-bed is actually, or could be, putting themselves into a catabolic state. So doing Lantus intramuscularly, you're letting it clear out of your system faster before, let's say, you go to bed, where you're in an 8-hour unfed state. So if anything, I'd say IM has more benefits than taking it sub-Q.
So I can tell you on myself, I'll take it before my evening meal, which is my biggest meal after training. And I wake up starving in the middle of the night. Like I am eating, probably 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I wake up just starving from the insulin. And then the times that I haven't taken it, just for whatever reason, that's not happening. And same thing with GH. I'll take GH pre-workout, and then I'll also take it in the middle of the night on an empty stomach. And within an hour, I'm freaking starving. I'm going to the kitchen to get some food. And I try to eat protein and fats during that time instead of carbs. Really, just because I don't want to be running to the restroom as much. And after I take growth in the middle of the night, if I eat proteins and fats, I just go back to sleep. But if I take carbs right then, my blood sugar raises and I'm going to the restroom. So I have I have my own glucose monitor besides the finger prick. When my blood sugar goes up, I'm going to the restroom. It's just, but it triggers my Crohn's for whatever reason. It triggers me to go to the restroom. Where I don't think everybody has that same experience. Maybe, well, I also don't have a colon either. So when I'm going, I'm going.
I had some notes here and I can't find them on my computer, but some good topics I wanted to. I meant to send you a list actually too, but I didn't get around to it. Um, oh, Halo. I'm assuming you haven't seen any of my videos on Halotestin, right?
No, I mean, I've
No.
used it, but in the past.
So this is a really neat one where, everybody's talked about forever how liver toxic it is online, but nobody ever posts any studies, right? They just say it's very liver toxic, but there's never any studies following it. I forget the reason why, but just semi recently, I was like, I've never used the item. Everybody says it's toxic. So I just kind of ignored it. And I'm like, wait, why am I just listening to this? Why don't I actually look for some research? And I started looking into it. And yeah, there were studies at moderately high dosages, upwards of 2 years straight. And it was compared to Anavar, and it was safer on the liver than Anavar. So
Wow.
another big item that I feel so many people are sleeping on and they don't want to use, thinking it's extremely liver toxic. And it's probably one of the safest orals actually out there.
We've always been told that it's the most liver toxic thing that there is.
And you read this a million times probably in the past 20 years. Have you ever seen somebody post a single study on it? Because I sure haven't.
No, I don't
And
know where that came from, but that's just what we've always been told. It's the highest androgen. It's like a pure androgen, and it's the most liver toxic.
which is also the complete opposite. It's so funny, like you said earlier, all it takes is one person, 20 some years ago, probably on the forums to put, this is really liver toxic, guys. It's one of the worst. And then everybody for 20 years now just repeated it over and over again. And I literally looked for every study there was. all I found was one of the highest safety profiles of basically any anabolic. So this drug was used. It was so safe. They've used it for so many instances in women and children. Um, they use it in a lot of height growth studies, puberty like effects. And again, they compared it to a whole bunch of different anabolics in so many different studies looking for like, okay, would this be safe for women for this disease, this illness? Because, we don't want women to grow facial hair and get, a hoarseness of their voice, all the androgenic side effects, and literally comparing it to Anavar, D-ball, just all of them. It literally every single study in almost every single area, it was the safest. And not just that, it was not the it was much more anabolic. I forget all the exact comparisons to which ones, but it is a strong anabolic, way more anabolic than Anavar and most all the other ones they compared it to. So it's an amazing anabolic with no side effects, basically.
And are you saying that it's not high androgen?
No, it's not. And that was one of the biggest things that they were looking at it for when they were doing all different studies to use it in women and children because it was such a low androgenic profile. Like I
So
said, they had women do 2.5 milligrams of Anavar and they got androgenic sides. Yet they went up to like 10, 20, 30 milligrams of Halo and they're like, hey, this is safer than Anavar.
so one thing that's attributed to androgens is aggression. And they'd say the more energetic something is, the more aggressive you get. And I know halotestin is one of the things that can make you very aggressive very fast. So what would you attribute that to?
So, two things to go to this. This is my thoughts on this because all the studies they showed people having a happier mood, improved mood, this and that. All my guys that I've had use it recently, I made sure they sent it out to get it tested. And the people got real Halotestin. Okay, we took the results as this is their effects. My thought is this because you've been around a while, and I've been around since Operation Raw Deal and Gear Grinder too, and that even something like Anavar, like 90% of the time, people are getting fake Anavar, or they were not so much maybe anymore, but like every single time somebody gets Anavar, it's Winnie or Debo. Like this was such an issue for the biggest time ever. And Halotestin is way more expensive than Anavar. And obviously the reason people were giving out fake Anavar is because Anavar is way more expensive than D-ball and Winnie. So we give you the cheap product. My suspicion is I don't know what they were giving people, but Halotestin is super fucking expensive. So it's just like Anavar. Here, take who knows, Anadrol, methyltrans, some DHT, take anything. Who knows what they were giving them, but it's probably cheaper. So I feel like all the reports online of people getting insane aggression was either placebo because they read it gets insane aggression, or they got some other strong DHT because the studies show improved mood, and all my guys, they all improved mood. It's not a harsh androgen.
So there was a point where they were selling Halotestin. It was a low dosage out of the pharmacies in Mexico. It was from a pharmaceutical company, like not from a UGL. And I remember I used to get that back in the day, and that stuff made me pretty aggressive.
Was it a placebo, I wonder, on you, or?
No. I mean, if I want to take it like literally right before a powerlifting meet, I could get pretty amped up on it. And the other thing is a hardening effect. Like you take it right before a show, and it gives you a hardening effect.
So that part is interesting, 100%. So one of the things that sparked my interest of it was Kevin Levrone. Like he was one of the hardest guys, on the stage, like 99% of the time. He he just looked like granite, right? Kevin Levrone, what he said, he altered between two things. He said the last few weeks out from the contest: Halo Solo or Halo and Winstrol. And he just had this amazing granite look. So the past while since I discovered Halo, I've been utilizing it on my guys, and that's the same deal. They get that hard granite, like grainy look. So that is the interesting thing about it. No typical androgenic sides and all the studies, and even my guys that are like hair loss prone, this and that, but it has that hardening effect. I'm wondering if that hardening effect, because it definitely does make you fuller. Every guy that I put on, they look super full but tight. My thought for the hardening effect is it just has great glycogen storage abilities, and then it suck that water out, get rid of that water sub Q. So you got the glycogen exploding you with that water being sucked out, and that's what's giving that granite look. That is my best guess for it, because it absolutely does still do that.
Well, I know Masterin's like also high anti-estrogen,
Yeah,
and it also gives you a hardening effect like that as well. So
yeah.
maybe it's high anti-estrogen as well.
That is the interesting thing. Here's another interesting thing on it, which is pretty wild and pretty crazy. So, like I said, they did this study upwards of 2 years. You know how you take anything, it shuts down your natural hormone production, LH, FSH, testosterone, whatever. Did not touch these values. LH, FSH, and the reason I mentioned this is because the estrogen was untouched as well. It's mind blowing, basically. Like, everybody wants to run a cycle or SARM, they want something to prevent shutdown. This item, and you can look at these studies, very easy to find. Halo did not shut any of the people down upwards of 2 years on it.
At
Yeah,
what
I do not know why or how it's doing it, but it's interesting.
at what dosage?
The studies that measured the LH, FSH, testosterone, and all that for sure went up to 30 milligrams a day. I cannot remember the studies if they on the ones on 50 and 60 milligrams, if they checked the hormone parameters or not. Upwards to 30, 10, 20, 30, didn't touch it.
So one thing, the strength gains on that are phenomenal.
Yeah. So that's what's interesting about it. It is having some type of androgenic, like cosmetic effect and strength and whatnot, but it is not hitting. It's not giving women beards. It's not, you know what I mean. It's not causing those other androgenic effects. So it's something unique about it for sure.
Right. It's yeah, it does. You for sure get stronger. I mean,
Yeah.
almost that instant strength, which is your nervous central nervous system, your CNS is just fired up.
Here's an interesting part. One of the topics I was going to discuss, which might come into play with actually the halo, because everybody goes by those androgenic and anabolic rating ratios, like the levianator muscle versus the prostate. Testosterone is 100 and 100. You know those terms, right?
Hmm.
So, well, it's interesting because as we know, anavar doesn't affect the prostate that strongly on those charts. So, anavar must be a weak androgen. But this is what is really neat. And even I think Masteron is rated a weak androgen. I'm pretty sure on those charts in comparison to anabolic, but we know it's a strong androgen. What's really neat, which throws those studies completely out the window, is that just like how Masteron, Debo, testosterone, any anabolic might bind to the muscle cells super strong, and it might bind to the prostate super weak. That's just not specific to prostate. So them testing prostate and rating a drug's ability to be how androgenic it is based off the prostate is completely inaccurate. So another study, they tested a whole bunch of different tissues. One's considered anabolic, androgenic, et cetera, like prostate, seminal vessels, et cetera. Anavar could, let's say, activate the receptors on the prostate very weakly. But on the seminal vessels, it was 100 times more androgenic. So this leads us to we don't know because there's no test on this on fat cells. The androgen receptor is anywhere throughout the body, all different activities. So halo might be super super strong in areas where we're getting fat loss, but it's binding to the tissues that would cause beard growth, the skin tissue. It might be binding to that very weakly. So those charts are completely just dog crap, basically.
That's pretty interesting because I know that Halotestin like forever has been reserved for like the week before the show because of the supposedly so it being so toxic. So that changes everything.
Yeah. Well, the other funny thing, to add some real world data on it, again, my guys have been using actual tested halo, like they sent it up themselves to get actually, HPLC tested. Um, my guys, and a lot of people were a little bit scared, and they got their blood tested frequently. I had one guy liver enzymes improved while he was on it. Obviously, he was eating clean and taking care of himself, and everybody else liver's enzymes stayed the same. Nobody's raised like even a speck.
Wow.
So we got the, and we don't even need that real world data because we have the studies. And when you're doing a study, you have actual pharma grade halo to test on patients,
Right.
participants.
That's interesting. That's like spins the whole halotestin on its head. So let's talk a little bit about like your supplement regimen, because I know you got me on that, and it was pretty. It definitely worked, and I'm sure there's quite a bit to it.
Well, quite a bit changed too, probably. Well, yeah, because I have it up here. Definitely lots the same, actually. Yeah, actually lots the same, but there definitely is some new interesting stuff here. Um, yeah, where did you want to start? Any ideas?
I know one thing you turned me on to was the collagen peptides, or at the time I think we were just using beef gelatin.
Yep. Um, so yeah, one of the great and amazing benefits of that is that so obviously everybody knows what Jello is. Anybody watching this, know what Jello is. Jello is made of gelatin. It has this hydrophobic like effect. So when you have this with another meal, any mixed meal, when you have this with it, it creates that jello like effect in your stomach. And what they showed was that, so instead in a normal stomach you have your food floating around and you have your enzymes and everything, it's having to find food to attach to it and break stuff down. Same with the gastric acid. They found that you had a much quicker and more efficient digestion when it became this jello-like mass due to gelatin. So it concentrated the stomach acid and everything into the mass with it, and it just degraded it in that mass as a whole. So it's something that is very, very beneficial for digestion. It's something we kind of ignore in nature, because if we were out in nature, we would be eating all of those connective tissue parts and stuff like that from the animal. We wouldn't be throwing it away. And now today we look at health or natural eating as, oh, I'm going to eat lean meat, lean red meat, a chicken breast, etc. And we're throwing out something that nature intended us to, eat as that whole, basically, and we're defying nature and defying adequate health, basically.
So what new things have you added in since back in 2016 when I first started this?
So one of the big things here, I'm going over the list. I have it on the computer here about what I gave you, is carnitine. Not new, but new for its purpose. So obviously, a lot of people use injectable carnitine, namely today. But came across a really cool study. First, I'll explain the parts of androgen receptors. They had a group of people, all resistance trained, and they categorized them into low hormones, medium hormones, and high hormones, and also who got the best results: amazing results, medium results, low results. And they found out that the people who had the best results, their hormone levels didn't matter at all. What mattered was their androgen receptor sensitivity. So who had the most sensitive androgen receptors, they gained the most. And that's like with anabolics, I was telling you with the short cycles, the main effects we're getting from anabolics is they're increasing the androgen receptor sensitivity. Bam, we're getting all the gains till that goes away. Nothing to do with the hormone levels. So what's interesting about carnitine is it enhanced androgen receptor sensitivity. And what was really cool about this, they did a study, they compared it to 120 milligrams a day. I never even seen this study before till I was looking for this. 120 milligrams a day of testosterone in the carnitine group had better erection quality, libido, and stuff like that. They didn't test the hormone levels, but that wouldn't have mattered anyways for carnitine, since it's not raising testosterone. But its effect on the androgen receptors was so pronounced that it was stronger than 120 milligrams of testosterone. And what's neat about this, I've had multiple people, Chris Duffin,
Yes, he's
powerlifter.
he's the one that gave me the BPC TB 500 protocol when I tore my calves.
Okay, so I was coaching him for a while there, and he's on my testimonials. You see him on a website. He's actually, some of his pictures are on like my front page. So yeah, I had him use it, and his weight was stagnant for a while, and he wasn't really being serious about his lifts, like going too hard to get stronger. Second, we added the carnitine. He's like, holy shit, I just hit a PR on this, and my weight's now up 5 pounds than it's ever been. Obviously, not the next day, I said right away, but yeah, as soon as we added the carnitine, everything just started skyrocketing. So, carnitine tartrate, the oral form, that was what was used in the study, is one of the best natural, whatever you want to call it, like supplements that is going to have a profound effect on your physique.
So why everybody is now promoting the injectable?
So the injectable likely has the exact same benefit as the oral. The only reason I don't say the injectable is because, like we know with the Esters, like test D versus test prop, we just thought test was test before. So the fact that this is injectable, maybe because it's then bypassing a stage in digestion or something, it might not be as effective as oral. But again, this is me just making this up and throwing it out there and just going by the study. So I suggest the oral because that was what was used in the study. It's likely the same as injectable, but I know most people use the injectable form because you do need to take a lot higher of a dose of the oral form to get that same concentration of just injecting it. But like we know with oral steroids, was it I think D-bol or Winnie, I forget what the study was on, but when you inject D-bol or inject Winnie, it has a different effect on different hormones versus taking it orally. Like I'm pretty sure when you took it orally, it lowered the SHBG, and when you injected it, it actually raised it. I think it was. I can't remember which one it was. So when you change that, whether it's something going on in the first stage of digestion, things change. So that's what I suggest the whole form.
And at what dosage?
So the study did 2 grams times two. So I suggest around 4 to 6 grams total for the day. I don't know if 6 gram is better, but it's kind of like, hey, let's
Is that
it
broken
might be
up
better.
or spread out through the day, or you just take it all at once?
The study did 2 grams twice a day, so that's normally how I suggest it. 2 to 3 grams twice a day.
Interesting. So I tried the injectable, and based on somebody, Bro Science, said you have to take it pre-workout, and I took a 200 milligram shot pre-workout, and I'm not sure why, but I did it only 2 times. It made me feel really weird, and I felt kind of almost like hot, and I was weak. I felt weak when I took that shot, and then tried to train on it.
Try the oral form. Like I said, it might be different, like many other drugs are. But yeah, nobody's ever reported that on the oral form, and I've been suggesting it for like 10, almost for a long time
Now,
now.
I think it could be me too, that, my metabolism is so fast that maybe it like dropped my blood sugar or it did something. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, because like even sipping the intra workout drink, I felt, I can't really explain it. Just, I felt weak, like my lifts, everything felt heavy, and I felt not nauseous, but like on the borderline of going there. I've got a pretty good stomach. Like I've never puked during a workout or any of that kind of thing, but I felt just that feeling of almost sick. But that could be just me. Other people say it works for them. I don't know.
Could be you. It could be the injectable form. Definitely try the oral form and see if it does the same.
And
I'm
you
almost slightly inclined to say it was because it was injectable because I know people have reported some differing effects on an injectable versus oral. So
you recommend the liquid or powder, or does it matter?
doesn't really matter. Basically same deal. Capsule versus liquid, right? One just suspended in the
I know they
liquid.
used to
So
sell it in liquid, in the refrigerator for whatever reason.
I still see that every once in a while. I remember before it's always in liquid. Yeah, I
In
remember that. It
in
was
a refrigerator, like it was gonna go bad or something.
yeah, yeah. Now 90% of the time I see it just in pills on the shelf, and that's normally what I'll buy when I'm buying it. Is just on the pills in the shelf.
Or just powder.
Yeah, yeah, or powder. Um, What else here?
I think you had me on a pretty good dose of glutamine. I think you were the one that started me on that,
Yeah, yeah, I have
and
that in
I
here.
and
Yeah,
I'm
we were
I'm still doing it.
yeah, 10 grams 3 times a day. So that is something that I only use generally like in a case like yours when we need something. I'll use it generally short term to help repair the intestinal lining. That's generally when I'll use it, especially at that such a big of a dose. Um, the funny thing is, normally when a normal, healthy person takes it with a healthy gut, it'll actually constipate them pretty badly. So it can be beneficial in something like Crohn's. If you have too fast a transit to kind of slow things down as well.
Yeah, so I told Chris Duffin actually that I'm taking 30 grams, like a protein scooper of glutamine every
Yeah.
day, and he looked at me like I was crazy.
Yeah, I think that I can't remember if I came up with that dose or if I increased it from a study. It might have been a study. It was near that dose or that dose where, just had a profound effect on repairing the intestinal
Well,
lining.
I can tell you I've been doing that ever since. I I make this drink every single day. It's a gallon and a half in one of those Stanfordine coolers, and I put in there a full scooper of glutamine, which is like a protein scooper, 10 grams of creatine monohydrate, um, EEAs, 2 scoops of 10 grams of EEAs, and then I put in one emergency pack, and then I put a teaspoon of Himalayan pink salt and a teaspoon of this other. It's like kind of a sea salt that has more minerals. I forgot the name. It sounds like sea salt. It's like higher in potassium and magnesium. I'll put a teaspoon of that in there, and D-aspartic acid, 1 scoop of that, and then I take these the flavoring packs that are made of just stevia, and I put 3 of those in there because otherwise the salt it's kind of hard to drink that. It tastes too salty. I literally make that gallon and a half, and I drink that all day long, like from morning to night. And I usually go through between a gallon and a half and 2 gallons a day, every single day, and I've been doing it for years. And if I don't drink that, I get dehydrated fast.
K2. This was another one that extreme. I feel like there was not a person talking about K2 before till I started talking about it. Now everybody's talking about K2 now because, this was in 2016 when I wrote this protocol for K2 um,
Yep.
with vitamin K2.
And now I've gotten that K2, the one they sold it at the Olympia, and it's a very high dose vitamin K, and it has several different types of vitamin K in it as well. It has K2 and it has the other vitamin Ks. I forgot it's called Special K, I think.
Yeah. I feel like nobody was talking about this before till I started posting on forums everywhere because nobody was talking about this. Like, not the only, but the main danger from the typical anabolics is, most won't affect your kidneys or liver that strong, like utilizing some DECA and tests, whatever, right? The main worry is going to be heart disease. And the main reason steroids cause heart disease is because they increase calcium uptake in the intestines and then increase CA2 levels. And this is what causes cell death. This is what causes hardening of the arteries, etc. And K2 and not only help shuttle the calcium out of the blood and into the bones, but this is something that nobody talks about because I haven't really said it, but K2 actually can break down hardened calcium. And I see this as semi touching on now too. I feel like I'm the only one, like, again, like I said, talked about it, but there's actual studies of K2 reversing heart disease. So not just preventing it while you're on steroids, but actually reversing it. But you needed a very, very high dose of it to get like an actual reversal effect. The other thing in here, basically, nobody talk about is because, as you see on the plane here, are you still taking vitamin E? By the way,
Every day, twice.
gotcha.
400,
So this is
400
one.
units twice a day.
This is one I know nobody talks about. They always talk about, oh, take K2, take K2. Nobody ever says to take vitamin E with it. So vitamin K, K1 and K2, they help your blood clot. Vitamin E is the anticoagulant. Vitamin E is like your body's natural aspirin. So instead of taking aspirin, which can have some side effects, vitamin E is our body's natural aspirin. So steroids in general too, they increase the clotting ability. So when you're taking K plus steroids, you're increasing your risk of a clot, making your blood thick, which it can pool in the chamber, increase risk of just a nasty place you don't want to be. Vitamin E is what balances the vitamin K, especially if you're taking a high dose K to prevent the heart disease. And it's what keeps that blood thin so it doesn't, if you're, especially a lot of steroid users will have a little bit of arrhythmia. You'll see all the time, especially GH users. GH users, very, very common to have a little bit of arrhythmia and the heart pumping. Vitamin E is what keeps that blood thin enough so that you're not going to get that clotting when your heart is having that like extra second of um, pooling in your lower chamber there. So, yeah, if you're taking a high dose vitamin K, you always want to be taking an adequate dose of vitamin E.
Yeah, like I said, 400 units twice a day.
Yeah.
And or 400 IUs, I mean. But one thing that was interesting, you mentioned about the K2. I've been doing that ever since you put me on it. I went and got my calcium CT score done about a year and a half ago, and it came back really high. I think at like 800. And so then they went and did the MRI on my arteries and everything to see. And I also had ultrasound. And the interesting thing, and my cardiologist had no explanation for this, I have no calcium on the inside of my arteries. It's all on the outside. So there's no blockages or anything. For whatever reason, I have calcium on the outside of my arteries, but nothing on the inside.
Yeah.
Which is still probably not good. But that's where it is.
Yeah. Generally, when it's on the inside, it is the cholesterol, what they call soft plaque, right? That's when it starts. You get the soft plaque, and then the calcium comes and hardens over the soft plaque. What you're getting is just a typical heart disease. I was going over our plan here, and I noticed I didn't put a dosage for actual K2. How much K2 do you think you were taking over this, whole time? Just what's on the bottle?
Originally, I got the regular K2 from the, you know, online farm, All Star Health, and what was the dosage of that? I don't remember. But now I got that special K, which is a very high dose K1 and K2, and I think even has a K3 in it.
So you're probably just following the directions on the label when you got it.
Yeah, taking it twice a day.
Gotcha. Yes, if you remember the brand, Google it later and check the dosage of the brand because yeah, I'm looking over here and I just have the explanation of K2 and I don't have a dosage for
I'm
you.
pretty
So
sure. I'm pretty sure it's now nutrition.
gotcha.
Before
Yeah, and
that,
I think
until I got the special K one, and that's a much higher dosage.
yeah,
Of,
and then if you're taking the now, I think the now is 60 or 120 mcg, which is basically nothing. Like the especially for heart reversal, you need a 700 mcg for a mild effect. And then when it was MK2, MK4 version, they did 45 milligrams a day. And as you see, a lot of these are in
Now I
micrograms.
remember I
So
was taking the MK.
yeah,
Yeah, I
the
was taking.
MK4.
Yeah, I was taking the MK version, and I
Gotcha.
think in
Yeah,
the one I have now, that's that special K, it is the MK version as
it's
well.
probably both. I think in that
Yes.
MK4 and MK7, I think
Mm-hmm.
might be. Yeah. So you were probably before taking a very minor ass dosage, is my guess, especially if you were following the bottle, because especially if it was MK4, they rip you off hardcore. There are so many products out there are like 100 mcg when it needs to be taken in milligrams.
Got it. Well, the one I've been taking now, I've been on that for probably, I want to say 2 to 3 years at least. It's way higher doses than the regular stuff, like 10 times higher the dosage.
Heart scan again or no? Since
No, I just had this done like a little over a year ago,
Gotcha.
and
Okay.
like I said, the calcium TC score was high, but there was no blockages, and there was no zero calcium inside my arteries. It was all on the outside.
You might want to send me the product for that you're taking now, and I'll send you the studies on the actual reversage, the dosages for reversing it. And you're probably, even the product you're taking now, you'll probably want to take like 5 times that dosage.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. Like I take my supplements. People
Yes.
that you and I've given this. I've actually done this with my competitors. I've taken my supplement regimen and I've given it to a lot of my competitors, especially the older guys, and they just say they feel amazing, like light night and day difference with the supplements. Like people discard supplements; they don't realize how important they actually are.
Like, well, especially like this instance with heart disease, and or like an example, not taking the right dosage of it, right? But let's say somebody buys some K2 and they got sold a, not a crap product, but they're sold out a dosage that isn't going to do much. Like you don't realize the importance of some supplements and like how powerful they can be, especially when taken properly too.
Now, a friend of mine, Carbon Tushnik, she's an IFBB pro, and she's out of Canada as well. And she runs a DNA company, and she actually takes your DNA and based on your DNA puts a supplement program together of and the DNA test shows you like what supplements you need and how much and what you're more susceptible to, and it also drugs as well. And it's pretty in depth.
I know a few clients where I have them get that done actually too. It's really interesting to see what you can find out about the body, right? Like whether you have a methylation with this or
Hmm.
even very specific drugs, right? They'll determine like, oh, you cannot metabolize this very specific drug properly, this percentage, and so on. It's crazy where science is going now, for sure.
Yeah, I recommend people do that. I got my DNA tested, and um, like I needed methylated B12. Um, there was a few things like I don't. I'm a bad DHT converter.
That's
So
interesting.
yeah, and
Yes.
I knew that even before ever taking the test. I just don't convert DHTs very well.
Well, what I was gonna say, especially for your age, right? Your hairline, you still got the hairline. So
Yeah, people say like, why have you not lost your hair? It's
there
not happened.
there you go. You're not making much DHT.
Yeah, and I don't do well on DHTs either. As far as
Funny.
like I get my joints ache and everything else, and I start getting inflammation from DHTs. Um, so yeah, I don't do well on like Masteron. Actually, I took something called dehydroboldenon.
Oh yeah, DHB.
Yeah, I took it for this was a couple years back. Everybody on the certain message board was saying, it's going to make you more insulin resistant. I'm sorry, insulin sensitive. So I'm thinking this is great for, growth hormone and everything else. Everything they said good about it. And I took it, and I can tell you I got strong very fast, like amazing strength gains. And um, sexual function was like through the roof. And then 8 weeks into it, all hell broke loose. And what I mean by that, my joints started hurting. First, it was my lower back, then it was my knees, then my shoulders, then my elbows. Like everything started hurting so bad to the point where I almost couldn't even train. And I went off of it, and it took like 6 months for that to go away. I was so inflamed from that stuff. And the only thing that got that inflammation to go down was when I finally started taking a bunch of nandrolone. That reduced the inflammation from it. So I'm like,
You get the anxiety and mental effect from the DHCs.
so I don't really notice it from like Primo or anything, but I will tell you, I did notice there was something different about that dehydroboldenon. Um, And I can only explain it like this. So trenbolone gives me I get angry fast. Like I'll have a fast temper. This gave me a different thing. It was I don't give a fuck. Like I just felt numb. Like nothing made me, I wasn't angry. I wasn't happy, sad. I was just like, I just didn't really care about too much, which wasn't a bad state of mind to be in as far as like working and stuff like that. Cause man, I could
Yeah.
work like crazy and nothing seemed to bother me right then. But like I said, yeah, it wreaked havoc on my joints. I hit an 8-week mark. And when that happened to me, I went on that same message board and I said, hey, you know, everybody's been saying all this good stuff. Has anybody else experienced this? And like all of a sudden, like 20 people were like, yeah, it happened to all of us. Now, one of my friends, he's a pro bodybuilder and he's been on running it for 6 weeks right now. And he's liking it. But like I said, it didn't hit me till 8 weeks in and I was running 200 milligrams a week.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, for me, that's just off the table because the side effects were way too severe. I mean, I literally, I have a little thing with my SI joint, and it got so bad that my back was just killing from that. It felt like I had a steel rod in my back. And now, like you know, it's still there, but I don't. It doesn't hardly. I don't hardly notice it at all.
I have not touched any form of DHT or like for like God, you know, 10, a good 10 plus years either. I just,
Yeah, and
namely me, it's
more recently, I decided to try Primo, and then after a couple of weeks, I started having the hurting joints and stuff like that too. So I just cut it out.
well, like you said, you've never gotten gyno off testosterone, right?
Never gyno, not broken out, no water retention, nothing.
Yeah. So you're one of those people that seem to handle the estrogen fine, and there's no need for DHT almost in somebody like you. Then you know what I mean. You're not needing to control estrogen. Basically, you seem like you're doing
Except the
basically fine.
DHTs were good for sexual function, and when my estrogen's high,
Yeah.
that can affect it.
I get that's what I get to. So everybody always what's funny is this it's inaccurate. Everybody always talks about, oh, when your ego's too low, when your estrogen goes too low, you know, high risk of sexual dysfunction. I came across a study where they gave men just solo DHT and there was minimal impact on sexual function, but high estrogen, immense. And that's what I get too. My estrogen can be bottomed out and I'm near normal. But the second it gets high, it's like it's not working like at all.
Yep. I remember actually I had things weren't working right, and I had Aromasin from India, and it was like hologram package and the whole deal. And you know, it seemed legit. It was coming right out of a pharmacy, but it wasn't working. And then I switched Aromasin to a brand that I know that is legit. And overnight, like literally overnight, everything changed. And my estrogen on my blood work dropped. And the reason I noticed it wasn't because I went and got my estrogen tested and it was like 150. And I'm like, I'm taking Aromasin. How can this be 150? Because it was fake. I still have like several bottles of fake Aromasin.
It's so funny. A lot of people deny that the AIs can work that fast every time. When you know, even clients will be like, "Man, be like, how's it going to work this fast? How's it going to work this fast?" I swear, like 4 hours later, they'll message me and be like, "I'm noticing this. I'm noticing this.
No, it
I'm
works
noticing this."
fast.
And yeah,
It's literally over. You take it at night, and the next morning is night and day.
the main big thing for me is my estrogen is high because estrogen will impair bile flow, kind of like most orals do, slow you right down. When my estrogen is high, bam, constipated, no appetite for me. The second I take an AI, it's like within that certain amount of hours later, I'm starving, I'm able to poop, and I'm golden.
Interesting. I think different people respond differently to AIs depending on maybe how much estrogen you make or something. I don't know. I try to keep mine so that I keep it in normal range. So I'm just using the Aromasin like 3 days a week, 20 milligrams. And that keeps it right around between 30 and 40.
The other funny thing people really like to deny is that, they talk about the dangers. Don't use an AI, low estrogen, heart negative effects, right? Heart disease, etc. Everybody ignores this effect that men with what was it? I can't remember. It was just even slightly high estrogen in natural men. Okay, had a 200% increased risk of heart disease. So everybody talks about how bad low estrogen is. High estrogen is basically almost just as bad, and that's everybody likes to scare people off AIs or stuff like that. But
So
your
why
estrogen
do
is
they say that high estrogen is so heart protective?
it's here's the thing. They're twisting it is what they're doing. So they're going by studies that show this, because I hate arguing this with people all the time. A few famous people have said it. So when estrogens, this is what the studies will be. There will be something like mice, humans, whatever, have low estrogen. We bring estrogen up. Oh, 200% decrease heart disease, this and that. Estrogen, because they're seeing estrogen go from low to normal. Oh, estrogen is heart protective. Yes, at a normal amount. That is the thing. Like everything in nature, basically, a normal amount is healthy. When it's too low, bad for the heart. When it's too high, bad for the heart. Everybody's saying that when it's high, it's good for the heart is absolutely wrong. Every study you find when estrogen is out of range, in the high range, it is negative for the heart. So it's people literally reading stuff wrong or twisting it and then parroting it over and over again. So low and high is both bad.
And they also attribute it to making more muscle gains.
And that is the other funny thing too. It literally what those studies show is the same exact thing. Because there's different studies where they have different graded levels of estrogen. You need a normal amount of estrogen for proper androgen receptor sensitivity. That's it. Any higher was no extra muscle growth. And this is where they got confused again, especially in animal studies, like where they give cattle tren, and when they add estrogen, they saw more gains. Oh, so more estrogen is anabolic. No, no, no. Even in those animal studies, when they kept giving more estrogen, there was no further muscle growth. It is literally just saying that you need a base of estrogen. That's basically all it is.
Which makes total sense. I found that on myself too. When my estrogen is in normal range, I'm growing pretty good. When it's high, I'm not growing well, and my strength is not good.
It has lots of negative qualities when it's too high too. Like I said, impairs digestion. I forget what it was. I think it was a very high level. It impaired insulin sensitivity, but it was like a very high level. Still, it's balance.
Well, we've covered quite a lot of information, and I'm sure we could keep going for days because you're a wealth of knowledge, and I, I I know a lot of things that you say are quote controversial because it's what the prep coaches don't talk about. I mean, it's not like some of the mainstream prep coaches would not agree with what you do, but I tend not agree with them. I tend more to agree with what you do, and I always have. Um, so I hope people are going to. One thing I want to emphasize with people is like whatever somebody says, it's not that's not the law. It's not the passed down from God. Just because some prep coach said, this is the regimen that Ronnie Coleman took or whatever. You know, you got to keep thinking. I'm always trying to learn more, and I've never been at a point where I thought like, okay, I now figured it all out. Because the moment you do that, then you're not learning anymore. So I'm constantly trying to learn and try to figure out different, better ways of doing things. And I think you're kind of the same way because we're always trying. I think it's just a curiosity. I want to know like what works better, what training method works better, what diet works better, what drug routine works better. And a lot of the times, what worked, you know, like I've told people, high dosages might work for you for 4 or 5 weeks, and then it's going to stop working. And you can't just keep doing that indefinitely unless you want to just kill yourself. So, where can people contact you?
Um, all my social media is under my name, Taeian Clark. I'm sure you'll have my name on there. My website, Taeian.com, then Instagram, YouTube. It's all Taeian Clark.
Yeah, I'll put it all in the description. So this is great information, and I learned some things, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to learn a lot. And I'd love to do this again with you sometime.
Absolutely. No, I've been like, no, we've been in contact for about 10 years. So it's a good little catch up. Definitely like to do it again for sure.
Yeah, next time let's like think up some different subjects you want to talk about, and we'll do this again.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll write up a whole whack of them. Some really ones that'll piss probably a lot of people off.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with that because I'm not beholden to anybody. Like this
Yeah,
channel is called Uncensored. That means we say what it is. I don't care what any other prep coach says or what some bodybuilder says. We're gonna talk the truth about how things really work here.
it's exactly what you just explained there. I'm the same way. Like even if I feel like I've read everything. I'm going above and beyond and be like, okay, is it what I believe now? Is it 100% true? No. Is there a little bit better? Is this a little bit better? That's me too. Always got to keep trying to find the better and better ways or the accurate ways.
Right. Or what's more optimal.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great stuff. And you guys, if you have questions, which I'm sure a lot of people are going to have questions, go ahead and leave those questions in the comments and description. Uh, and so that way, we can put together another video for you guys and try to answer some of those questions for you. All right. Anything else you want to promote or anything before we go?
No, that's it. Definitely. I'll wait to watch the video and definitely let's do this again.
Yeah, I should have it. Well, it'll be up by the weekend.
That's awesome.
And yeah, I'll send you the links and all that, and I'll post it all on social media and everything as well.
Perfect.
All right, this is Larry Pollock from Underground Performance Gym, hardcore training gym in Ventura, California. Stop in and get a 7-day free pass, and don't forget to go to our website, undergroundperformancegym.com. We have HD muscle and Chemex supplements on sale right now, so go there and stock up on your vitamin K and protein and your aminos and whatever you need. That's it. It's a wrap.